And boom, we are
So
live.
it's another free flow Saturday where two guys go rambling on their own, apart
Two
from
guys
the
just having their chit chat and banter.
chit chat and banter.
Mm.
So it's a free flow Saturday. Uh, Maybe you can talk of is there any effect from the Mandamano? Are there any take homes? Can we say there's any improvement in anything from the Mandamano? It was supposed to be the razzmatazz of the Republic.
I mean, at first we thought it will only happen on March 20th. That was the
Mm,
day that Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Tunis
mm,
all conspired. I don't know who coordinated them in such a fashion for them to pick that particular day for them to have this mass action. And of course, each country had its own grievances that they had with the establishment, that is the government of the day. For Kenya, it seems to straddle between one, they're saying that the vote was stolen. That's with the incoming of a new government last year in September, and also high cost of living. But I wonder why this story of the vote has been stolen is coming up now, months after they had gone to court, presented their case, and it was determined that Ruto won the day. So several months later, they're now sort of coming back with a new brand that we now have a whistleblower and we are still contending. I don't know. I think it's, for me it seems to be more of a noisy affair than anything that somebody is having of credible protest about. Um, in terms of high cost of living, yes, I think that in no doubt is being felt. That's on the back of we've had high cost of fuel, which started off last year. They are said to be as a result of the war out in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. I wonder how true that is. I think for me, it's an indicator of some of the geopolitical realignment that is happening. You know, you've got a China that wants to assert itself. You've got a Russia that wants to assert itself. There's a realignment, the coming together of certain allies in opposition to the existing superpowers. That's the US, backed by the West, other Western countries, mostly, Western Europe and others. Um, so I think with that, and of course, the whole global economy, I guess it's going through. So there was that happened on the 20th. And it is from the back of that they now say that every Monday and every Thursday, I don't know for how long, they will be having mass actions, what we've termed as mandamano. Is it Mondays and Thursdays or what? So the question becomes, really, before I continue rambling on for long, is what really is the goal of this mandamano? I don't see it. I think it's just been very disruptive. It is, I mean, I read some reports of people, particularly in the tourism sector, of a tour company that had to cancel, I think, a group of people that were set to come into Kenya, and they lost that deal. I mean, there are all these impacts. Really, can the government really be able to function normally with this kind of disruptions? We've seen already Nairobi coming out and saying we are banning demonstrations because, I mean, invariably when these things happen, there's definitely destruction of property, possibly lives will be lost. People are not going to work. We are seeing empty Nairobi on Monday. Probably it wasn't as bad as the 20th, but nonetheless, that kind of when people are in fear, they don't know, should we go to town, should we go to work, should I open my shop? or will it be looted if I do that? So people tend to stay away, and that's a day's work that has been lost. That's how much of revenue is the city and the country ultimately losing.
So, where is the problem solving aspect of that?
That's correct. That's correct. These are just, yeah, we were actually,
Because
the last time when we were talking
my
about it,
thinking
it was
is
the same thing.
my thinking is
Mm.
I think it's time uh, opposition leadership should package itself as the alternative leadership, because this firebrand thing, this is something that was developed during the dictatorial times of the Moi regime, where you are pushing against a dictatorial regime. But now we are in multi-party, and are you going to use that same method of hyping people without creating a solution? Because right now we need solutions. Because if people go to the Mandaman and whatnot, are you providing an allowance for for someone to put in the pocket or in the stomach that evening? So where is this? Where is the the problem solving aspect? You normally say if you want to be valuable, solve problems. Shikamo Sarif Mustafa, our Lone Ranger audience. Even
Yes,
if we are
welcome,
playing
Sharif.
one guitar, even if it's one guitar or one drum, or just you're just mouthing off, this guy will always show up with the
Oh
tickets.
my goodness, man.
So,
We
mm,
need to give him some honorary award
mention.
or something. Yeah, but welcome, Mustafa Sharif. We are really humbled for you gracing us and coming in to join in on this conversation. Uh, there's something that you've just raised, Brian, which is one, opposition should really brand itself as an alternative government.
Yeah, alternative leader, because this style, it was the genesis of this style of this modus operandi was during the Moi era, whereby you are clamped down. There's no freedom of press, there's no freedom of speech, there's no word. So you are pushing against that. Now the freedom of press is there. You can even make cartoons or caricatures and funny videos about the president, and you are free. So that is a value we've crossed. Now why don't we adapt the alternative leadership system, whereby what I know is that leaders in opposition, as much as they are not in government, they are well connected. And I was discussing with someone uh, the amount of money being spent in the logistics of the Mandamano. It's not, I don't think it's small money. If they can work with like minded external investors and come up with a program whereby we say uh, counties that are in the rural area, for every county, we have at least four cottage industries. And right now, as people say, this is the best time to be alive. A long time ago, 20 years, the cottage industry had its own level of complexity. It was a bit of a headache. But now, due to the efforts of our friends from China, I can go to one of my villages and set up something as simple as a toilet roll cutter, a tissue paper cutter, whereby huge bundles of tissue are shipped in. We only have a machine for rolling, cutting into either toilet tissue or serviettes. Now, this is a system that is simply tailor made to invigorate the local economy, because you are focusing on fast moving or daily consumables. Things like when you talk a few years ago, if you are to go into toothpaste manufacture, you will have to formulate your own toothpaste. Now you can get any type of toothpaste from China and do bulk filling, semi-automated, that can employ even 100 people, because you want to invigorate that locality. And to some extent, you may be firing up a very unheard of phenomenon. You may be firing what you call an urban rural migration, because these cottage industries will need qualified people. As much as they are cottage, there's a certain aspect of technical qualification that is needed. And these guys, they all went to Nairobi to try things. Others went to repair phones, others went to sell mtumba. Others went to do all sorts of things. Yeah, there's this guy here, the USB cable, very, in fact, this is where the government is now failing. When you have such a thing, you get in touch with the people like Techno, people like Samsung, people like Infinix. You tell them, we are now putting a rule. We have a factory for manufacturing USB components. We can mount the part of the phone, that kit, the USB part can be made in Kenya. Yeah, you just clamp down for your products to sell in Kenya. That USB component has to be made in Kenya. You are free to bring in your quality inspection team to guide on shape and whatnot or standards. As long as the equipment is there, standards can be set up. If this week you are running a batch for Samsung, next week you're running a batch for Techno. This is what the government should be doing. Now, this gentleman, this wonderful gentleman, he is now getting into the market. He's competing with the already established brands. He's starting from ground up, and I'm not seeing any sort of initiative to lift such things. And these are the things that will somehow contribute to easing the load on the Mwananchi. Because as much as we are talking of reducing cost of living, the cost of living can be reduced, but for the guy who has 5 shillings in the pocket, that reduction in cost of living has not really assisted him. Because in this Nairobi, you'll find, in fact, I bumped into someone at Kencom. He talked to me, he said, Boss, I only have 10 shillings in my pocket. I need to get home. So, apart from toning down cost of living, what about now empowering people? Because again, you don't want to convert this country into what you call a charity case, whereby this issue of reducing cost of living on the long term is not sustainable. It is people to be empowered. So I was waiting for a situation whereby these guys, the government will step in and say, okay, Techno, Samsung, whatnot, we have a fully fledged USB manufacturing component. Why don't we have a licensed aspect whereby the USB component of the phone can be done locally? You can even set up offices within the plant concerned with the quality so that it matches the global stipulations. Unfortunately, that is not happening. So this guy will be competing with the highly established brands, and that's the reality of the matter.
Yeah, and let me comment a few on some of the points that you've commented. I think the one that you mentioned on alternative government. I remember one time, I think, watching on BBC, and I think we are running more or less on the same model. I think it's just how we've adapted it with regards to how an opposition needs to be. So ideally, if you're an alternative government, being in the opposition, you should have respective ministries that
The shadow
align with the
cabinet,
government.
the
Exactly,
shadow
shadow
cabinet.
cabinet. I think that's the term, shadow
Yeah.
cabinet. So if there's a minister for finance in government, you should also have a minister for finance as part of your opposition team. And the idea is to be able to have someone who really looks at respective functions within government and can be able to respond accurately to that. So, and they're well resourced, they understand the domain area that they are responding to. So if it's finance, you've got a credible team who are there in finance that are backing that shadow government. So that's what we're not seeing, because the game has been made to just be in contention, to just fight them. That becomes the main game. I mean, an opposition was meant to be a check and balance of the government, but the contention, and this is not just a Kenyan phenomenon, I think we are seeing it worldwide, and that's why democracy as conceived is now sort of breaking down. It's not as effective as it was once seen. I mean, I think there's that wonderful term uh, that is attributed to Winston Churchill, and he says democracy is the worst form of government except for none else, or something of that kind. Let me actually get the exact term so that I don't end up misquoting him. Democracy um, is the worst form of government. Because what has now become is, instead of trying to figure out a collaborative nature of trying to govern, the idea seems to be, let's oppose the government for everything. Even you don't even commend it for anything good that they have done. The idea is, and we see it this quite vividly, particularly in America. If you're if you are a Republican, you can never say anything good of a Democrat, and if you are a Democrat, you can't say anything good of a Republican. It's always you have to have a competing response to them, regardless of the facts in on the ground and what a
So
particular
it's sort of
policy is.
emotion driven. It's emotion
Emotion driven.
driven.
I mean, the fight has become the business of government. If
It
you are
becomes a
aligned to one
political.
government, and I guess that's why this sort of two pronged type of political systems are not are not good anywhere, because if you always have to pit people, it's always, sort of two sets of solutions that are there. Can there be a third view about that issue?
And
Can there
then
be sort of a centric? So people have been pitted between two opposing factions, if I might call it as such, and they are always at loggerheads. The idea is actually never to find a common ground. The idea is to always put them in competition, in contention with one another, to always make the fight be the business. The
yeah,
intention is never to be collaborative. The intention is never to come together to resolve an issue. Because me and you, when we sit, we can disagree on certain things, but then we can discuss and almost come to one common understanding. But that's not the nature of business. That's not the nature of this thing we term as democracy. Anywhere, it makes the fight be the main business,
you see,
while that should not be the idea.
the issue is this. As you've mentioned very clearly, common ground. There's no common ground. If you are to ask any of these factions, give us a quick picture of how Kenya should be 10 years from now under this type of management. You'll just encounter a lot of gibberish because that is not the main topic. The main topic is me overcoming you, me meeting you on a debate and hyping up people and saying it is so and so who won the debate. There's no one who's saying uh, by like what China did some time back. China was saying they wanted to create over over 5 million dollar millionaires in China. Now, that is a common thing. In that, if you are stepping in as an opposition, will task you, do you have a better solution for this? If you have a better solution, wonderful. Hop in. Because the time of politicking is over. Voting and whatnot and campaigning, that is dead and gone. So if you are going to step in, that's when we normally there's a very common sticker that is found in matatus. Have you come with a solution or are you part of the problem?
Mm.
Yeah. So if the government is there, is the government developing a solution? Yes or no? Is the opposition coming with an alternative that is workable, not some funny gibberish and emotional mumbo jumbo that is not having any meaningful direction? That's what you are lacking. Because if that was there, there would be no mandamano. Because it will be what we call pooling of ideas. Because already the resource, as much as the resources are there, the government is simply a custodian of the resources. They don't own the resources because in the opposition we have taxpayers, right?
Mhm.
So the government is simply a custodian. It's like what do we call it? A building caretaker.
It is.
Yes, it's nothing more than a caretaker because the government is not in business. The
Yes.
government is not doing anything that is generating money. The government is
Yes.
simply picking some millions from this businessman, some shillings from that guy on the kiosk, some 20, 30 shillings from this guy doing shoe shining, and collecting that money and seeing how to add value to this because that is our money. But now the question is there a consensus how these resources should be used in terms of end outcomes? Are these
Mhm.
two meeting and say, uh, these are our goals for the next 3 years? The next 3 years, we want what we call a long term plan that will reduce the cost of manufacturing such that the person buying the goods at retail level encounters what we call a reduction. Because right now, if we talk of reduce cost of living, reduce, what is the reduction formula? Reduce to what? As much as we are personally open to the reduction, but give us a formula. How is it happening?
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't tell
Instead
us,
of, yeah,
don't do,
don't tell
don't
us the
do,
problem. We all know the problem.
you know.
Are you part of the solution, or are you part of the problem, as you're saying? And
Yeah,
it's
so are you, don't, Nikama is like you're going to a doctor and the doctor tells you, hey, no, Andrew, you have a very serious headache. That's why you went there. Eh, You're not going to the doctor to recite for you a problem, it's to prescribe a solution. So even if you're saying reduction in cost of goods, so reduction due to what? Cost of manufacturing, cost of power, cost of materials, cost of the wage bill for these factories. So which is being reduced? We have to be very careful for it to be sustainable because it will be very dangerous if we pull some sort of a populist maneuver. Remember that during elections, which election, the price of hunger went down to 90 shillings.
yes.
Totally unsustainable because they were, it is something they are done with the millers, all right? Some agreement with the millers for the government to cater for something. Then after that, that thing erupted. We are now at 200 and some. So moving from 90 to 200 shillings, that means that move for 90 shillings was totally unsustainable. It was a very, some sort of a band aid. So we don't need a band aid. If you are going to say reduction, no, reduction of goods. Okay, what goods? Which factories make those goods? How are those factories constrained? What is the tax regime these factories are going through? What is the import duty on the imported ingredients used in making some of these products? So that is what I would expect the opposition and the government should be discussing about. Because you can't say reduce from where? These are profit making entities. Reduce what? Why? Based on what? Based on what metrics? What formula is there? Because if there's no formula, it will be reduced for a month, then somebody somewhere the strain will be too much. Somebody, it's like those motorboats with two outboard motors. When you kill one
Hmm.
engine, yes, the boat will run, but it will only run to a certain point, and that other engine will say, "Hey, guys, I think I've had enough of this." So we lack what we call a mentality of sustainability, and it's a very huge. It's actually an ecosystem, starting even from uh, tertiary education systems. These tertiary education systems are belching out hundreds of graduates every year. And unfortunately, the average Kenyan graduate is a serious non-value adder. Me being a former fresh graduate, you come to workplace, you are practically a nobody. You have to be trained from ground up. So these are the individuals. We have a lot of manpower that is not really being utilized. It's an ecosystem. These are the guys getting into factories. Then the factory has to spend extra time bringing them up to speed. That is a cost. So I've just touched on the surface. This is a discussion that has to take place in a very sober environment, away from the streets, away from the tear gas, away from the
Exactly.
stones, You have to sit somewhere and look at the genesis. How did we get here?
Mm.
How do
And
we have such a
you,
very
you also
crude?
you also
Yes,
touched on something where you were saying, the tactics the opposition is employing is the same tactics they did in the 90s when they were trying to either agitate for multi-party
yeah.
politics, and all the opposition that went towards
Mm,
trying to remove Moi.
mm.
Now we know, as much as they have that hashtag remove Ruto, that will not never happen. We've never impeached a president. We've never had a history of that. So the practicality of or the reality of that coming to base, we don't have any precedence to that. So it's
First
the
of
combativeness is nonetheless
you remove Ruto, that
become the
means
main business.
when you remove Ruto, that means we create some sort of a vacuum. That seat has to be occupied, correct?
Yes, yes.
Then we go to another election. What is the average cost of an election in Kenya?
It
Since we
runs
are
into billions.
so much into the election enterprise,
Yeah.
are you not simply creating a bigger stench?
And
We
and
know very
and
well.
and
Yes,
again, that goes again to the whole point. We are perpetually in a political mood. I mean,
look,
the 5 years before Ruto came into to claim the seat to be the president, what did we have? We had the what were they terming themselves? The Tanga Tanga and the other party, the BBI cause. And then eventually we started now campaigning towards the politics. That was like another 2 year effort. Now we've already voted in a president. The president has taken on power. But then again, you're still back again in the political phase now with this mandamano. When will we start developing and building the economy? How can you build anything sustainable with this kind of an environment where you don't know whether you go to work on Monday or Thursday? I mean, this is really a total waste of time, resources, um, creating a bad image for the country. There's no way this is sustainable.
and
Um,
what is funny is this:
mhm.
neither of these two factions has said, "Let us have a sit down with the manufacturing sector." We come up with a draft plan, like a 5-year draft that will say per year we are creating a situation whereby you have a percentage drop in commodity due to making the operating environment more conducive. Have you had any group of manufacturers being called to a sit down? No,
None.
because these commodities are made by manufacturers. No one is talking to the manufacturers. No one is telling manufacturers, hey guys, let's sit down. Can we risk some sort of a tax relief on commodity on raw material A, B, C, so that as we are giving you a tax relief, you are expecting a reduction in your final selling price, and that will convert to more sales. Then from more sales, we get VAT from you. So we say, let's lose one thing and gain another. I assure you, the manufacturers are ready to sit down. Our manufacturers have their figures at the tip of their fingers. They will tell you the reason why this is costing ABC because of this point, this point, this point. If you can sacrifice this and to allow this through, we are going to have a drop in a certain price at a certain percentage, and we expect certain increment in sales. They are ready to
So
talk.
that's true. And I want to come back to the manufacturing point. But I want us to go back a little bit again on the opposition and it being an alternative government. There was this thing that was introduced called devolution. We now have counties where, it means the management of certain resources have now been localized and brought down to where the common mwananchi is. Before it was more nationally driven, and your region could benefit depending on sort of the relationship you have with the commander in chief, i.e., the president. But now the opposition has within its power certain counties. that it now controls. And this will be the perfect example for it to show or reflect how good you are in management vis-a-vis the government. So, one, if you operate within the alternative government framework as it is should be, where you now are able to present credible, realistic a solution to government instead of just deciding you're just going to oppose for the sake of opposing, but then you can show clearly with the money that you allocated and is within your control how different, for example, a Kisumu is from a Nairobi, a Kisumu is from Eldoret, a Machakos is from an Embu. So, and this is the perfect place. And as much as I know there are certain constraints, now being a governor, you definitely have much more power to help. And I wanted now, with this now, to take us back to the manufacturing conversation. One, we've said building these cottage industries, just showing that example of this USB manufacturing. I mean, I looked at that machinery. That machinery doesn't look any complex, doesn't look like such a big, hefty thing that you have to keep or maintain. It looks like a very simple. What if these counties, with the resources and monies they have, could decide out of their resources, either they could decide to purchase this as sort of a youth development agenda, or they could even look at working in government to see, let's say, zero rate these things and all that. I mean, there are very many other credible. So the equipment to start doing very small level manufacturing is at our reach. It's
Yes.
within our disposal. I mean, those kind of equipments, you've just shared one with regards to, is it toilet papers or what is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's
So,
just bulk roll. You're just rolling and cutting and shaping. If it is toilet
I mean,
tissue, caveat, where is the complexity? Where is the rocket science? Or I'm
so
the
that
one who is
means
done.
every county should have its own toilet paper manufacturing
Yes.
cottage industry. I
Toilet
mean,
paper.
I shouldn't be in Machakos and seeing I'm still using Chandaria. I
Yeah.
should be in Machakos and seeing I'm using a local brand.
Yes.
I mean,
Something like toothpaste.
so toothpaste.
Yeah, toothpaste you just import. Yeah, in fact, a case study, a former colleague, uh, an acquaintance, he was running once the last time I saw him, he was doing such an enterprise, but he was using he was dealing in tomato paste. What he did, there was no need of looking for tomatoes and what. No, he flew to China with a can of top grade tomato paste that is available locally, one of the best tomato paste brands, and told the Chinese, "Give me something similar to this." And this is he went to the sample of his branding. Make for me this. So they did everything for him, tested the market, and then what was left, he made his own package, and then they were just sending him bulk tomato paste. Now
Mhm.
replace tomato paste with toothpaste, replace with shoe polish, replace with petroleum jelly. Yeah, all sorts of because what you are targeting is simply the main game is what you call economic flourishing of that small area. So if you are, let's say, Busia, I have one plant that is supplying the toilet tissue for the entire county. I have one plant that is supplying toothpaste for the entire county. And we sit down with the local business people, the small supermarkets, and what not to say, this is the product. We want this product to be number one on the shelves. Another factory dealing with things like petroleum jelly. Another one dealing with stuff like what? Commodities that are used in the house, chili sauce, and what not. Then what happens? The beauty of manufacturing is that manufacturing expands. Once you start doing that, a group of farmers somewhere will start planting chili because they are seeing there's bulk which is imported. Let's say, okay, we are importing 100% bulk this year. Next year, we are doing 50% bulk, 50% manufacturing from the farmers. Within a short time, you have a very powerful ecosystem. And the ecosystem is in manufacturing, transport logistics, sales and marketing,
and
internships.
this is a way to empower the youth instead of
Yes.
telling them,
Mm,
some funny jobs that don't make sense. and
mm.
and again, going back to that, and I know this manufacturing topic seems to be one of our favorites, and it's because it's a very practical thing that can mass employ many people and make us, instead of consumers, self-sufficient. And we are saying, let's strategically start identifying sort of the low level manufacturing can get in, as you have labeled it, the cottage industries, because
Mm.
these are, let's say if you had to bring like 5 machines of those that are doing USB manufacturing
Mm.
in Machakos, and put those all across in other counties, all the government needs to do is say, just make a policy decision. We are no longer going to be buying externally manufactured, that is
USB cables.
any cables manufactured outside of Kenya. There,
Yes.
if government as a sole customer
Mm,
makes that decision, it impacts everyone else,
mm,
because immediately we'll start seeing our local electronic stores
mm.
stocked this kind of stuff, because one, the bigger client being, i.e., the government, has already sanctioned this, and they say this is what we use. We are giving the other example about the cars, and that's why I've even posted this
Yes.
uh, tweet
Mobius.
here, because it's the one we're talking. So if Mobius, if government was to say we are no longer buying cars from outside of Kenya, and then tell Mobius, you're not going to assemble them outside there and say that they are Kenyan cars, while you've
Oh,
you've
make them
assembled them,
here,
make
and
them
we are
here,
giving you an advance order of 3,000 vehicles.
boom,
Central government, county governments, name it.
Mobius. That's all we should
Mobius.
be seeing on our roads
And next
immediately,
order of
when the
business,
individual
these are,
consumers.
and you say these are small vehicles. I want you to upgrade it to heavy commercial vehicles to be used by like in a KPLC, water board, and what name it. Kenya or don't know this water.
Buses for
Name
transportation.
it. NYS. Why do you think? You see, one of the weak weak areas of China is engine manufacture. They
Mm,
are not very good in engines. That is
mm,
why whenever you buy like a Yutong from China, it comes with
mm.
a Cummins engine and a gearbox ZF. But a Yutong that
Okay.
runs in China, they use an engine called Weichai. You will not find a Cummins engine running within China. Never. Even if it has issues, cloud, run them and improve them.
Mm.
In fact, there was a very funny saga that happened some time back.
Ah,
Uh, Singapore wanted to buy submarines from China, diesel
mhm.
electric. So the agreement was uh, the engines would be from German. But now, due to this war thing, German said, no, you're not having our engines. So the Chinese went to the Singaporeans and tell them, listen, we are having issues with the Germans. We'll give you these submarines with our own local engines. And
Yes.
guys from Singapore said, listen, the moment you put a Chinese engine, that sub utarudi nayo.
We
Kana-
won't accept it.
So in
The
terms of
contract was
clout,
very clear.
the Chinese engines are not really hitting. But then again, the government has enforced, as much as our engines are not so good, we will run them locally and use that opportunity to make them better.
Improve.
Those problems that we'll be facing, let them serve as motivation rather than saying our engines have problems, let us import. Hakuna. Wacha ikuharibikie, ikusumbue, you come up with a solution. And that is what we should.
Exactly.
That's what we should. In fact, I remember I put a picture of a tipper some time back, this Howo. It's just a collection of components from everywhere, and that is
other
industrialization.
manufacturer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. It starts from there. And as you say, the
Mm,
best training ground would
mm,
be locally, as you
mm,
say. So what you've just said, because there was a point where you got cut off. So China, when they export the Yutongs, they
mm.
export the ones with like the Cummins engine from
Cummins
America,
engine.
gearbox.
Huh.
But the Yutongs they produce, which are fully Chinese made,
Chinese.
with a
You will
Chinese engine,
not
run
see.
locally.
You will not see anything, even if they say those engines are problematic. Use those problems as a motivation,
Improvement. Yeah.
because the
So
moment you start
again,
telling people, the moment you start telling people
yeah.
these engines have a problem, you can import. You've killed that industry.
You have. So
Hmm,
outwardly, the brand looks good. Internally, of course, they can understand if the brand falters with the poor
hmm,
engines or whatever.
hmm.
But the brand is good. So as they still ride on established manufacturer in terms of the spare parts they cobble together,
And
they are they are still
just
and
to be
improving
clear,
the acceptance.
as
They are
much
then
as
improving
they don't
themselves.
have much, they don't have much clout. They're on an
Mm,
upward trajectory.
yeah.
Things like the ZF gearbox from Germany, we now
Mm,
have a partnership between ZF and China.
yeah.
They're adapting the technologies. The thing
Yeah.
is this: uh, do not say that you are facing problems with a certain situation, then you do
Mhm.
an outright replacement with something from outside the country. That is suicide.
Yes. Yes.
And they are so strict that it's I don't know how they did it. A powerful company like Tesla, when they
Mm.
come to China, they are being beaten by Wuling, a small vehicle. It's beating Tesla in sales. I don't know how they are doing the marketing, but that Wuling car, I think I've shown, it's a very small electric car,
Yeah.
is beating Tesla hands down. And
I've seen
Tesla has
some
a
around here, by the way. Is that the Wuling looks like a bird? That's their logo, eh?
I don't know the logo, but it's simply a small hatchback with the two doors.
Yeah.
An extremely simple vehicle. The first one had a range of 75 kilometers.
Yeah. It's
75. The
it's
first one.
actually it's some degree you might even confuse it with a Mitsubishi, but
Hmm.
yeah, I've seen it. So eh, and then that's why I come even to this this very tweet that I commented about.
Hmm.
And this guy really listed a number of cars that are said to be assembled in Kenya. What I do know is I think VW is being assembled out of the assembly point in Thika. All
Cintiq.
these others, I don't know where they are. Peugeot, I know Peugeot was announced to be made here. I think following, I think these are some of the things that Uhuru was pushing. Would be good to get the stats on this kind of thing. One, I would like to know where each of these assembly points is located. Two, I would like to know what is the employment capacity of each of those assembly points. How many cars do they produce annually? Where, I mean, how many do they sell? Who are they working with? Are they mostly sold to government? Are you finding also individual people selling? Is there a way we could turbocharge that Kenyans are buying more of this as opposed to the imports, the second-hand imports which have flooded the market? I mean, one solution, as we said, is if government decides to back the likes of Mobius, and that way, you know, they can sort of spark sort of the individual internal consumption. Where personally, like myself, I would feel confident going to buy a Mobius car built locally. So, it would be important to just not list them, but I would want to see what's the impact. Are these people employing tens and thousands of people, or this is small 500 guys
Funny
who
enough,
produce?
whenever we look at manufacturing videos from outside outside the country in the developed world,
Mm,
the first picture that comes into mind is a production flow.
yes, exactly.
I've never seen a production flow here. I only
Yes,
see a car.
we only see
They say
you're
this is
seeing the
Kenya
finished
made
product.
and whatnot, pioneering. Where's the production flow? Where's the production flow? And these are, if this is a new vehicle supposed to last, so financial. financing capacity should be very available, because this vehicle is not going to break down on the third year of operation. It's a brand new.
Yeah,
The way
I would actually,
the way Isuzu does.
I would be keen on hiring even an intern to go around Kenya and tell me. I mean, I mean, I presume many of these assembly points are either in Nairobi or and around Nairobi, possibly Mombasa. I know Toyota must be in Mombasa, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I would be keen to actually commission somebody to do this research.
Toyota are made under AVA. There's a
AVA.
place in Basa called AVA. They have been outsourced by many companies to simply assemble them.
Ah, okay.
It's
So
an
it's one
outsource.
company that might probably be doing work for all these different
Yes,
brands. Um,
it's an
but
outsource.
yeah,
AVA.
I would want to see the capacity of that company, and it seems like it's probably like I think even probably because I remember when I was growing up in the 90s, it's like people used to buy more locally made cars than the current period. You know, I'd see people with Peugeots because they used to be
Because
produced
those
locally.
days people used to buy brand new cars.
Exactly.
Mm.
I mean, now we
The
all
moment
want second hands.
they allowed second hand imports,
Yes.
that's where everything went kablooey. They allowed second hand imports. They
Yeah.
killed the industry. Rather,
And
because the brand new vehicle are quite expensive. But then
they're quite
again,
expensive.
how about empowering people? How about broadening the financial plans, the financing opportunities? Because even these second-hand imports, most of them are purchased through financing.
Yeah.
I used to have a neighbor who was a salesman in some company in Mombasa. There are some vehicles you would actually drive, you'll be given the keys to a car without paying a coin. What you need is a letter of introduction from your boss and three payslips, and
I
you
mean, why
drive
do
off.
you see, if you go to South Africa, I mean,
Mm,
just to stay within the continent,
mm.
you notice people there drive brand new
Brand
car.
new VW Polos, BMWs, Benzes, they are all over.
Exactly.
In fact,
And I'm like,
the
I even, yeah,
Polo is the Polo is the there's this Toyota
like
that's
the
very common in
Toyota. It's
Kenya.
like the Toyota of Kenya. Yeah.
There's a
Toyota
certain Toyota
Corollas
model,
or what?
not Corolla.
Corolla. Yeah.
It looks like a it is in the same degree as Premio.
Mm.
I don't know why I'm forgetting this car. It's a very common 1600. There's 1600 and 1800. Same
Mm.
chassis as a Premio.
Yes.
So it's very common. But when you now the opposite number of that one is in uh, in South Africa is the VW Polo.
Exactly. I mean,
Mm.
you see people, the kind of cars, if you go to, say, particularly in the big cities, when you see people rolling in cars, you're like, I mean, I remember a friend of mine, he's a senior guy, he used to work for UAP. He
Mm.
told me when you'd go to you go to SA,
Mm.
uh, people that are of even of a lower cadre employment wise, the cars they are rolling with, the guys are in Audis, BMWs, Mercedes Benz. And you know, when I
Yeah,
thought about it, I realized this is where financing comes in play, because
the,
there's no way you're going to put together, let's say if you have to buy a brand new Mercedes Benz, how much would it cost in Kenya?
the
Let's
brand new
take
one
A
depends
C200, a brand new.
because I okay if you are going to DT Dobby,
Mm.
prepare over 5 million shillings for the smallest level of Mercedes, more than 5 million shillings.
Man, and our taxes also. So one is a tax issue, and then the other one is
But you see,
to
as
look at
long
the
as
financing component
as
around
long
it.
as
Because
you
Mhm.
the financing is okay,
Yeah,
that guy will drive it, because they look at your pay slip,
yeah,
look at your trend of your financial trends, plus the letter of introduction from your boss. In America, people are driving vehicles on credit.
exactly. It's the same in SA. I
Hmm.
mean, I remember there's a good friend of mine. He went in to become head of IT for a construction company.
Hmm.
This guy was rolling in a Jeep, brand new Jeep. The next time I met him, he was telling me, oh, the Jeep had a problem, so they recommended I just trade it in. He was driving in a Mercedes GLS, brand new, brand
And
new.
it's not shining because they are just taking a portion of your paycheck.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And I realized the reason why this financing comes in play is if these assembly companies are producing X amount of cars,
Hmm.
for them to maintain that rate of production and still sell it for people, they have to figure out a way that they can sell it to people, because before you can cobble together 5 million, how many people can put together 5 million to buy a car? Even CEOs, it'll take them a bit of a while before they do that. And I mean, if they are not being bought a car by their companies, to put
And funny
together
enough,
5 million that you can go in and buy that car in cash, very few people can afford. So they just look at your employment. That's why you hear of this thing they call car notes. So paying for a car becomes like part of your monthly bills. So
hmm,
as you pay for your rent and your utilities, you've also included there what they call the car note, which is now the whatever amount. So when they look at your salary, if you can afford to put away 30,000 every month, that means you could get a nice brand new car, 30, 40,000. That's about 300, $400 every month. Could get you a pretty nice car, brand new.
funny enough, I was reading somewhere, like in America and Europe, the very rich people, some of them,
Yes.
they buy used cars. Somebody, because
Yeah.
a brand new car, they say it is ridiculously expensive.
Yes,
He'll
yes,
go
yes.
somewhere to a vehicle that has been repossessed. He'll
Uh,
just spruce it up, repair it, and start driving it. These
yeah,
are the rich people because they
yeah.
know spending such a huge amount of money,
Mm,
unless you are buying a vintage car like a vintage Ferrari, that's
yes.
okay. But a brand new Range Rover
Yeah,
to a tycoon, that is a very low value thing because it's not bringing him anything.
yeah,
So they would,
yeah,
some will normally refurbish vehicles. If I
yeah.
want to own fully, it's a refurb.
It's
Nobody's
a
going
it's
to
a
walk.
refurb. No,
Nobody's going
that's
to
true.
walk into a showroom and say
Yeah,
15 million. Those things we see in the movies, hiyo tunadanganywa tu. The
because
really rich people don't even see value in the vehicle. The vehicle is simply a tool
to
to,
help
unless
them.
you're talking about a vintage Bugatti, vintage Ferrari, or some old school type of car, these other vehicles are simply convenience tools.
And the thing depreciates the minute it leaves the lot.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
that's why
true.
you can
And the
get
thing
somebody in
depreciates the minute it
America,
leaves the showroom.
somebody in America, they acquired a Range Rover that model is called no 4.5 HSE at nearly throwaway price because they are telling him the
Mm,
factories are churning these things out like fuck and they are available on credit
mm.
like fuck. So why should you struggle to should I struggle to sell you a second hand Range Rover? Chukua na bei ya kutupa because we are busy dealing with the people who are buying through finances and that's where the money is.
Yeah, no, that's true. And there's a reason why. And this comes back to how money needs to be more liquid and moving in the economy. One of the reasons why you see, places like America, they recommend people to be paid on a weekly basis,
Yes,
and
for
then have all
vibrancy,
this, have
economic
all this,
vibrancy.
yes, have all these credit facilities that then, because once you have that kind of credit and financing capability, it helps the car manufacturers to continue churning out new
If
cars
I can
out
bring
in the
another
market.
angle,
Yeah.
that issue of paying people weekly,
Mm.
that to me seems like a matrix thing.
Again, it is.
Mm.
It's more of a.
Because
There's an
because
element of
imagine
it being consumerism.
because imagine you live near uh, the Karen, that mall at Karen, the waterfront or something.
Mhm.
You're earning a net of 200,000 shillings.
Mm.
That is 50,000 per week. So
Yes.
imagine on a Friday, you are hanging around Karen Mall, you're just taking, you're sipping a drink. Then you get a message, tip, tip, 50,000. And
Credit on
ideas
your
start
bank account.
popping in your head. Things start popping, that Karen Mall, the way
Yes.
so, the
Uh,
ambience and whatnot. It's so you're like, man,
yeah.
I need to buy some. So to me, that is a matrix move.
No, it
That
is. It
that's
is.
a matrix move.
No, it is,
Mm,
no doubt. I mean, that element, part of the
mm,
reason why you have,
mm.
um, where you have
You
this
see,
kind of consumerism
they
being
what they're
being
telling
enforced
you,
is for that.
the message they are it's called, like, I'll call it subliminal messaging, is that, Andrew, don't worry, the next paycheck is next week.
Yes,
So you see, you
yes,
have a paycheck of 200K, right?
yep,
So 50,000 shillings, pap, you are there, and you happen to be in the company of
yeah,
Chantel or Sharon and whatnot. You get that notification, ding, 50K. You blow away the money. Monday morning, you have like only 5K. But then they tell you, relax. Next Friday, there's another 50K coming in. Ah, no problem, no problem. So I only have to survive from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then another 50K. Let the party begin, bro. Let's
exactly.
go.
And this is how they do that credit scoring. Part of that
And
credit
now
scoring
the
is also
problem is
like
that
that.
you do that every week, then look at yourself 30 years from now.
Mm.
You own
You know, I,
nothing.
the other day, the credit bureau, they actually had given me a bad score.
Uh-huh.
And there was a time we were looking to get a loan for the business, and part of their sort of due diligence they do is they look at the credit score for each partner in the business. And one was I had a poor one, and it's because I was not borrowing enough. Actually, one of my partners told me, Chief, even if you don't need it, start picking money from Mshwari. So now, like every month, I always get money from the likes of Mshwari and other credit
That is
facilities
where
and
the
pay them and then immediately when I did that for like a period of about 3 4 months, boom, my credit score went higher. So I
that is why
realized it's more the more you borrow, the more your credit score goes
that's
higher.
where the somebody will tell you, the rich people, when it comes to personal expenses, purely debit card.
Mm.
Personal expense, debit card. But company stuff, credit. But
Credit.
personal, because a company loan, since it's a limited company, if you want to seize property, take whatever's in the office. But
Yes.
for my personal expenses, it has to be purely debit.
Yeah, and
I
they've
spend. That's
separated
how.
those entities. They've
Yes, that's
separated
how.
the two entities so they don't
And that's
impact
how
on one
those
or the other.
rich people work. And there's this tycoon. I forget his name. Uh, Fun enough, they say he's one of the richest people and he has no private jets. But he does, but they are registered in the company.
Oh
So,
yes.
so the expense for the his travel expenses is tied to the company, a company
Even
which he
cars.
owns, and the
I'm sure he
company he
has.
owns.
Yeah, and I bet he
Hmm.
probably even has cars that he uses personally, but they're attached to the company.
The company,
They are not under his name.
not a, that's the
Um,
company
you
name.
are just
So,
talking about how the rich buy second-hand cars. I think Warren Buffett is one of those examples.
hmm,
And as you say, not even a second-hand car that was like a brand new lot. It is a car that I think they said when there are tornadoes that happen in the U.S. and
hmm,
these cars, get impacted by the
they
weather,
got
then are
swept
taken
away.
back. Yes, they're taken back to the manufacturer. As you say, they get refurbished
Hmm.
and put out on the lot. That's what this guy buys.
You see, he's
while
understanding the value of a car.
yes,
The
while
value of
this
a car is to move him from one place to another. Then there are additions like the Wi-Fi, air condition, reclining seats. It is only the mere mortals like me and you would look at
yes,
the part and say, I don't know, Brembo brakes, and I don't know,
yes,
touch screen. And this guy looks at you and says, listen,
puny. You're so puny.
puny. No, he's not. He'll say puny in his mind, but he'll praise it because chances are he's a
Yes.
shareholder in the company that manufactures those vehicles. So he'll
correct.
actually, yeah, get something that you're an entrepreneur. You need to present yourself. Get this Jaguar, what not? And he's a shareholder in Jaguar, and he drives a second-hand vehicle. I don't know from God knows where. Oh,
Yeah,
matrix, matrix. That's the matrix for you. It's
it's a
good that we
matrix.
recognize it. Mm.
No, no doubt, no doubt.
Mm.
Part of this consumerism is just to keep you. That's why there's this thing of you have to buy the latest version, the brand new. If it's, they have now killed the whole repair aspect of machines
Yeah.
and those elements, so that you have to always get, and that's why they have to
Mm.
provide these cheap credit options that you get addicted to, but they just
There's
want to
money
ensure that.
everywhere.
Oh
Like
yes,
that weekly salary. That means in a monthly salary, you'll be very scared about blowing money when you have an entire 3 weeks left. But
yes,
if you
30
blow,
days.
I blow 50K, like today was on
Yeah,
Saturday, I blow 50K, but I know 5 days from now there's another 50K coming. Oh, come on. What will happen? I'll go borrow. Buddha,
exactly.
niokole 30K, niko na ka 50 kanaingia on Friday. But you have placed yourself in a matrix. You're
Yeah,
not going to build
actually,
anything.
you find in most of those societies, savings culture goes down. I mean,
Somebody was saying that
China has higher. uh,
In America to find someone with $1,000 in their account is nearly impossible.
it's it's hard. I think they
Mm,
say, and these are the people termed as middle class. Many have like only what $400 to $500 in their
mm,
account,
mm.
and it's I guess it's the credit system that not does not incentivize you saving for the long
And that
term.
is why China is beating them. Jack Ma
Oh
is saying,
yes,
China, we spend what we have.
you spend what you have. That
Yeah,
discipline, to
yeah.
some degree, there's definitely a
Mm.
benefit to that. So it's finding a balance, particularly when you talk of how do you foster manufacturing, particularly for some of these sort of heavy capital um, products vis-a-vis what people can afford. So, and I guess maybe where that applies is where you sometimes are forced to put something down, and then now you can be able to purchase it on a month by month basis. So either they
I
agree it's
remember
10% or something of that kind.
some Chinese comedian when he first
Mm,
landed in US, he
mm.
started saving money to buy a car. So he saved. Now he has the money in his account. He goes with his debit card to the showroom. And that salesman looks at him and says, "What? No, 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 we can't accept that. We only sell it on credit. We can only sell
Yeah,
it
I mean, I think
because
there's that
if you buy
example that,
cash, you are killing the system. If you buy
yeah,
cash, you are killing the system."
there was that example I think Trevor Noah was sharing where he wanted actually to buy a car, and apparently they couldn't allow him because, and he had all the money, he could buy the car right there and then.
But he had bad credit.
But he had, I mean, he sort of hadn't established his credit system with them for them to allow him to buy the car. So it's and that's why just
But
this whole credit
you can
system.
beat that matrix by buying second hand. If you buy
Yeah,
second hand and you refurbish, you've effectively beaten the system.
it's a very convoluted kind of a system. Like
And
that
he,
example I was even given of myself. Um, it's like they incentivize the guy who borrows more vis-a-vis the guy who doesn't borrow. The guy who
matrix.
doesn't borrow shows one, he plans himself very well, he saves for what he has to purchase. If need to be, maybe credit comes at certain points, and this is when you're buying things. This high intensive things could be a piece of land, a house, and that kind of a thing. But they're telling you, no, we don't want you to save. No, we don't want you not to borrow. We want you
You
borrowing. We want.
you are
It just
you are
looks
breaking
upside
out of
down.
the matrix. You are trying to break out of the matrix. Stay in the matrix.
Stay in the
Stop.
matrix.
Stay in the
Stay
matrix.
in the matrix. Stay in the
Mm,
matrix.
that's how it is.
Man, we've hit an hour plus, and I was wondering where this convo would be going. I didn't know it would even go past 30 minutes, but
This is
it
the
seems
beauty
like
of a man's mind.
we can
Beauty
go
of a man.
on and on.
Mm. Gratitude to Sharif Mustafa. I think we had somebody called Lute Family. Yeah, Lute Family.
Yeah,
We
welcome,
had a
Lut.
new
We really
member.
appreciate you.
Hmm.
Um, let me mention him on the chat. Um, Good. So I think we can wrap it off from there and looking forward to the next one.
So, once again, it's a free flow Saturday. As we say, the conversations that, yeah, they just flow. We don't have a topic. There's no timetable. There's no marking scheme. There's no curriculum. You log in, fire away. The beauty of a man's mind. That's how we work. Uh, minimize kinudia, maximize your masculinity. So, adios.
Adios. See you next time.